All right, we are live. Welcome to another episode of Roasting Marshmallows. My name is Rolf Suit and I am your host. Have you ever had an opportunity to make a change, but you chose not to take it? Did you maybe respond with, what if it doesn't work? Or are you sure that's a good idea? The fear of change is a subtle one. It operates in your subconscious, convincing you that it's there to protect you, that it will keep you safe. Or does it? Embracing change can help bring growth and with that fulfillment and ultimately success, both for individuals but also for organizations. And today we are roasting marshmallows with Linda Rising, author of several books, including one called Fearless Change, Patterns for Introducing New Ideas, and its successor, More Fearless Change, Strategies for Making Your Ideas Happen, which can help you and your organization to bring about change. Linda is an internationally known presenter on topics related to patterns, retrospectives, influence strategies, agile development, and the change process. She has a PhD from Arizona State University in the field of object-based design metrics. Linda's background includes university teaching and software development in a number of different domains. These include telecommunications, avionics, and even strategic weapons industries, which I really would like to talk about, but it might be top secret. So, she's probably going to have to kill us. Welcome, Linda. Good to have you on.
Thank you so much. And I do want to mention that Fearless Change and More Fearless Change were written with my co-author and longtime friend, Mary Lynn Mans. And I'll just share a brief story about work I did on the strategic project for the military. I was going to a conference and I had a little brief meeting with my boss and I said, is there anything I should be careful about in describing my role or whatever the research part of what I'm doing on this? And he said, Linda, you don't know enough to be dangerous.
Okay. So we're good. We're good here.
I can talk about anything because I don't know enough for anybody to be worried about. We're good. We're good.
Okay. I suppose that's comforting on some level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first question that I have for you basically is that this whole thing about bringing change to companies and whatever is because I know this guy who actually studied for like 4 or 5 years in something called change management here. Do you consider the field, the books that you've written, do you consider that change management or is that like a total different subject?
Well, I guess I don't know an official definition for change management, but it doesn't matter who's doing it. The book Fearless Change and More Fearless Change were written for people in the trenches or managers or executives or consultants or people in families. And after a while, Mary Lynn and I realized they could even be patterns that you could use on yourself.
Yeah.
That, you mentioned your unconscious mind trying to protect you. And we know that's the job of the brain. The brain is not about finding truth or making sure you understand reality. It's to keep you alive. And that's why we've evolved with the brain systems that we have, because it was successful. It kept our ancestors and therefore it kept us alive. That's what it does. And it doesn't do that regardless of whatever reality is. We could have a philosophical discussion here today about whether or not anyone can truly see reality or whether it matters. And whether that has to do with effective change management, seeing reality, or whether it's really understanding what drives other people's decisions. And from that standpoint, those patterns are useful no matter what your role is in the organization.
But for individuals, I understand the whole fear of change and trying to keep the status quo in order to survive. But for companies, usually it's if you do not evolve or, go with the flow, companies usually die, right? When they stagnate and don't change.
But isn't company a group of people after all, right?
Yeah. And that's probably true in general, but there are companies, and I'm thinking of one that was a subcontractor for one big project I worked on who is still doing the same thing several decades later. Now, it's not a company that sustained huge growth, but it has survived, whereas a lot of other large companies that I have worked with, so that I did get to see them from the inside, are no longer around. So it depends. You know, like I'm a highly paid consultant.
That is nice.
It depends. It depends. So yes, growth is a good thing, but there are many companies who have survived doing the same thing they have always done in the same way, had not gone agile, never picked up the latest buzzword or whatever, and are doing just fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need to change for the sake of change or because it's a trend.
No, that's right. And in fact, one of the arguments I make a lot is there's no science behind the decisions that we make in business environments. Nobody ever does any randomized, double-blind, controlled experiments with a placebo. They just hear some great stories about what other companies are doing, and they believe that, well, we should do that without any evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cargo culturing.
Yeah. Cargo culturing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of that.
And so what drove you to say like, okay, because you said like, oh, we can apply these strategies of changing to ourselves. But by then you've already wrote the book. But what drove you and your co-author to actually write the book, to actually put it down on paper? Was there some successes you've had and said like, oh, this really works. We need to spread this knowledge.
Yeah, way back in the day, so the book was started, the very first book was started in the late 80s, early 90s. And at that time, I was part of a large organization, and we were looking at patterns. And we thought design patterns was a good thing. Mm-hmm. Again, we had no evidence, but I started introducing it into my company. And as I did, I began to think at a meta level, well, these are patterns for object-oriented design, but I'm using this book to introduce the idea of patterns. Could there be patterns for introducing patterns?
That's a good question.
Yeah. So I
and apparently there are
to other people who were trying to do the same thing. And back in the day, you probably weren't even born then, were you? No.
I'm 34.
I'm an 80s baby. I'm from 1982.
Yeah. So back in the day, we had something called a listserv. Way back, a listserv. And so I could get on that listserv and I could actually talk to Ralph Johnson and Eric Gamma, and they would respond to me. Yeah. I would say, well, have you ever thought about patterns for introducing patterns? And so a few of us began sharing our experience, and we thought, maybe there are. And maybe we could begin to collect those somehow. How would we do that? And then a conference appeared on the horizon run by Ralph Johnson at the University of Illinois. It was called PLOP. And it was a venue for people who were writing patterns of just anything, user interface, customer interaction, system testing, and organizational patterns of various kinds. So psychological patterns about people, and that was the beginning.
Okay.
So I have another question. If I'm not mistaken, you are based in Nashville, in Tennessee, right?
I am right now, yes.
Okay.
And you are also Music City.
Exactly, that's where I'm going at, and I think you're also a musician yourself.
Yes. I have, my husband and I have a little orchestra here. We live in a retirement community, and we play I see you have guitars.
Yeah, man, I have multiple guitars, but
Right.
I know the Gibson factory is actually in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm a big fan of Gibson guitars for sure.
Okay, I'm trying to think about that. But anyway, we moved to Nashville because my daughter and her husband have a rock band. It's called Phoenix Rising. So if you go to their website is that's P for Phoenix, prising.com. But
All right.
not such a fan of rock music. I like the Renaissance, early Baroque, and I like early music. So I'm a keyboard player and also recorder player. Most people think of a recorder as something that children play in grade school, but there's a whole family. So we have the soprano, the alto, the tenor, the bass, the bass,
Oh, that's nice.
the sopranino, the garkline. And it's a pretty basic instrument, so the older retired people in our community can learn it. So we teach it, and then we put it together in a little orchestra, and we are still meeting in our garage in small groups.
Oh, wow.
So even through the pandemic, we were playing in our garage. Even in the winter, we bought a kerosene heater and put it in the middle of our garage, and we are social distance. So
roasting marshmallows around the campfire.
Yeah, we were roasting our instruments around that kerosene heater, but we kept going
Good. How long have you been playing music?
forever, I think. Maybe a long time.
So,
longer than you've been alive, perhaps.
Oh, that's good. And
Then you must be really good, right?
Yeah, I think music is so important to your brain. We could list a handful of things that some of us have lost along the way. One of them is music. The other one is being in nature.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have that, if you don't have any music in your life, if you never spend time in nature, then your brain doesn't work as well. That's something that's been with us for tens of thousands of years. It's a part of who we are.
And that is exactly why I'm actually bringing the music topic, because I've also somewhere came across somebody describing music as multitude of patterns coexisting in synchronicity.
Yes,
how much music has helped you with your pattern work and the other way around?
Yeah, I think it's intricately involved because there's a lot of new research that's just coming out from Harvard Business School, of all places, about ritual.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's in response to the idea that people are suffering from anxiety and depression in the pandemic. And what they found is that if they have just even made up, it doesn't have to be connected to religion or any deep philosophical belief. It's just a collection of things that you do that you not only feel better, but your performance is enhanced. And we know a big piece of that is music. That when people get together,
for sure,
and they have music and they do something, it doesn't matter what it is, you do something together. So when we play in our garage, the door is open, of course, because we don't want to be inside, and people will come over. They'll just bring their chairs and they'll sit in our driveway out in front of the garage, and they'll sing along with us, or they'll applaud. Even we're rehearsing, so this is not a performance, but being a part of a group of people that's playing music has measurable effects on the brain, and everybody feels better after that. You can measure it.
Would we call that also a certain pattern for a certain change?
Yeah. It could be.
What you just described, this act of getting together, creating music, inviting others, and changing people's moods towards positivity, towards...
Yes.
And I guess that's what ritual is then. That's a pattern.
Yep.
Yes.
Absolutely. It brings people together. And whenever you can do that, we know that they're more open. It's like sharing food. I mean, your podcast is about marshmallows. It's a pattern from Fearless Change, bringing people together to eat food, to share food. Also makes them more open. They listen to what you have to say. They're more likely to change in the direction you want them to go. So those are deeply hardwired, ancient traditions that we've forgotten. It would be better if we could do this outside, if we could have the marshmallows around a campfire.
Oh, yes.
Out in the forest, where the trees and the green grass, we should be around green. So there's a lot of stuff we've forgotten that we get in big organizations and we think, no, we don't need to have windows.
Yep.
We don't need to let people go outside.
Yeah.
Put them in cubicles and let them be productive.
That's right.
Right? Or perceived productiveness.
We just line them up and keep your heads down. It used to be heads down on an assembly line. Now it's heads down, focused on a screen. Now we are all staring at screens all day long, and we're not looking at trees and nature. It's not good for our brains.
No, and there's also, I think, a reverse state, because like the most I notice, as long as I stay in the screen, as less I want to go out. And then actually doesn't get very much better than, it's quite detrimental, I would say. I totally agree.
Yeah. And in fact, the argument a lot of people use is flow. They will say, I was in flow and therefore I was very productive. No, you weren't. What you were doing is becoming addicted. There's a big difference between the intent of flow, which is positive, and the intent of addiction, which is negative. Your brain can send you a big surge of dopamine and a whole host of other chemicals that will get you to do things that maybe are not always the best for you. And we love dopamine. That's what leads us to addiction. And that's kind of when the brain has lost its way and is now doing things that are not healthy. It leads us to spend time watching screens, eating bad food, smoking cigarettes, taking alcohol, doing drugs. Those are all addictions that call us to keep on doing whatever that is. That is not healthy.
No.
But if we talk about being in a flow when you're sometimes working on a problem, on a work, or maybe sometimes you're like writing a chapter of the book and you're really into it, and things just seem to click at that moment, and you can sit for, I don't know, a couple of hours straight and you feel great. Would you that equate also as something that is not useful?
Yeah. Because there's now a lot of scientific evidence. If you've read the book Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky showed very clearly that your conscious attention span is about 45 minutes. And that if you try to force it, even if you feel good, even if you think you're in flow, if you try to force it, then you are really deceiving yourself, because it's called system 2, your conscious mind, it's going to take a break anyway. You may think that you have spent 2 hours focused on your screen. No, you really haven't. And it's a much better way of working. So I think the Pomodoro people were onto something. That if you recognize that, and set your timer so that you won't be caught up in that if you take a break after, say, no more than 45 minutes and stand up, maybe go outside, walk around, what you'll produce will be better. And you'll be more efficient and more productive than if you had just continued to sit there, caught up in this dopamine-fueled, focused, staring, addictive attention.
I definitely had that same experience multiple times, of course, when I'm a software engineer usually, you spend an entire afternoon building something and you feel pretty good about it. And then the next day you come in the office like, man, this can be even better, or this is crap, or, or it's wrong, maybe even sometimes. And so is that comparable? Like maybe I should have just forced myself to, take a break?
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, in the middle, say, while you were working for several hours and you got stuck on something and you thought you had solved the problem, you said, oh no, this is really going to be pretty easy, and you put in your solution and now you've got stuff that doesn't even make any sense. And if you had just stopped, if you had taken your break at 45 minutes on your way to go outside, walk around with a cup of coffee or something, you would have realized immediately, oh, wait a minute.
Yep.
What did I just write? I better back up. Let me go back and straighten that out before I really go down a path that's going to lead me into a huge, huge mess. Oh, yeah.
And do you know what is the reason why we actually do that? Like, because let's say I get the point, right? Like every 45 minutes, take a break. I think it's the same when I'm driving and I'm late. And I'm like trying to speed, and I know I'm going to gain 30 seconds in the end time, right? It makes no sense. I stress myself, but yet I can't help it but keep doing that.
Yeah, that's because the two pieces of your brain are Kahneman called them System 1 and System 2. And System 2 is the one with the 45-minute limit, and it's the conscious, linear, slow, rational part of your brain. And when it runs out of steam, when it just can't go on anymore, now your deep unconscious System 1, the one that's fueled with dopamine, saying, no, I want more cookies, I want more drugs, I want more alcohol, I want to keep staring at this screen. And will lead, there you go, and will lead you astray. It will lead you astray. So most people who are on a diet find, okay, I can watch my diet in the morning, but then as the day goes on, System 2 gets tired, and it just can't keep up. And now System 1 that wants the chocolate chip cookies and the Heineken beer is going to take over, and it's going to say, the heck with that diet. No, man, bring on the calories. I want to eat. Oh, yeah. So, System 1, it doesn't know about diets. It's survival, and it wants to keep you on the drugs and on the food. That's how we survived. We're not used to having food everywhere. Our ancestors were starving most of the time. And so we didn't stand back and say, oh, I'm not sure whether I should eat that or not. No, the survival technique was, it's here, eat it.
Eat it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like for first time in human history, we live in food abundance.
Absolutely.
What you mentioned earlier.
Well,
people most of the time were hungry than fed.
Yes.
In history, so
yes, that's right. And especially if I lived in Arizona for 20 years, and in a little corner of that state is the Navajo Nation. And the people there have a genetic makeup that really ties them to their ancestral heritage, and they are just not genetically prepared for modern food. And when they eat bad diets, which is what they do mostly now, they have a huge collection of health problems and obesity. And it's because their bodies are still living in the Stone Age, yet they're surrounded by McDonald's and French fries. Yeah. It's a problem.
It is a big problem. Yes. And I have this issue.
Well, you're not alone.
It's a good thing.
And that's okay.
And the problem is we rely on willpower.
Yes,
And that's
exactly.
run by system 2, and it just doesn't work that well.
Yeah.
So the only way around
gets tired.
it is do not put yourself in an environment where you will have to make a decision.
And if I take it back to the fear of change thing, is then the fear of change in system 1, embedded in system 1, where your brain just does not want change?
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Usually it comes from some kind of rational analysis. Well, we looked at what that company was doing over there. That's logical. Oh, they seem to be very productive. So therefore, the result of the logical argument is, well, we should also do that. When really deep down, we have an emotional connection, an unconscious connection to what we've always been doing, and we've done it pretty well. So why should we change? We don't really think that's the way to go. And we have internal conflict between the emotional unconscious and the rational conscious.
So we, I think we're very much aligned here, and that's all the decisions that we ever make are emotional decisions, and then we try to rationalize them afterwards with information, data, talks to friends, and that's why we also create biases. We surround ourselves with people that confirm our viewpoints. We don't want to interact with people that tell us we are wrong into something. Also, the work of Antonio Damasio really explains this part that people cannot, if your emotional systems are impaired, people are actually unable to make decisions and act on them.
Yeah.
So we say that, okay, we make the decision and then we try to find data that justifies our decisions. Fair enough.
Yeah. Or
can you ever make a case that can data actually change emotions?
yes, it can happen, but it's not something that immediately happens. So that if you go into an organization, say, or you yourself read some kind of scientific paper that clearly shows that what you're doing is not the best way, or the data shows your organization that you really should move to agile, or whatever the decision is.
Or stop smoking.
Yeah, or stop smoking. That doesn't happen right away. You have to hear that information from many different sources, and you have to hear it over and over and over. And you have to be increasingly surrounded by people who say, yeah, it's not a good thing to smoke, and I think maybe we should all stop smoking. Because if you look at the data and you don't change your environment, then you'll keep on smoking.
Yeah.
So it can happen. It can happen. But facts are not the best way to influence either ourselves to change or organizations. Yes, as you said, you need to have the facts, because when they make that emotional decision, they'll need to rationalize it, explain it. But the reason why that decision is made,
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea. It's all unconscious.
Yeah, and I think I just finished this book that I can't remember the author names, but he talks about managing transitions, and it's not per se the changing is the problem that people has, is more the transition between one change to the other. It's what is complicated, right? And as far as I understood from what he said, every time you're gonna move from A to B, you have to grieve. You have to go through that process of loss, and you have to go through that process of, there is a new beginning that I don't know what it is. There is the uncertainty. And that's what people really have a hard time realizing themselves. And I think that's the emotional shift between one change to the other that makes it really, I think, hard to accept. So it's not like, let's say, smoking, right? If you stop smoking, you need to grieve that whole loss of, I don't know, taking a break every 45 minutes. And it is somehow, maybe every smoker take a break every 1 hour, what is probably better for their own brain focus than to their lungs, but I can understand that.
Yeah.
But isn't it also because people often the parallel you're going into? I think the author is William Bridges.
Yeah, correct.
That you're talking about. So isn't that because people tend to equate also their thoughts and behavior to also their identity. And then once that gets challenged, it's really difficult to divorce from that. And then you actually really need to have some sort of event of like a certain piece of you needs to die for a new transformation to be born.
Yeah. So you can also look at the work of Virginia Satir. There's a diagram that she has in her books that I really like because she shows a graph of your progress, and in the middle, in the transition state that you mentioned, all of a sudden it's total chaos. You don't know what to do from one day to the next. You might stop smoking and then you start smoking again, and you go back and forth, and you don't know exactly what to do to handle the feelings that you have. So that transition, and that's going to happen not only for individuals but for organizations, is not going to be very productive.
Yeah.
You're going to have to go through that, suffer through that. What should I do now? Who am I? What's my identity? If you've always thought of yourself as a smoker and now you are not.
Yeah.
And yes, I have a talk about smoking and how beneficial it is, because you never see a smoker staring at a screen for hours at a time. No. They would not do that. Not only that, but now they have to go outside.
Yeah.
So they're outside. That's a huge benefit. We are going to...
And they're socializing as well, right? So they're building also connections and networks.
They hang out with the smokers. So they have a little social time. They are out in nature. They take a break. There are huge, huge benefits. In fact, if I'm going into an organization where I've never been before, the first thing I do is look for the smokers. Because they know what's going on. They talk.
I used to have a manager in my previous company where he also said, like, if you want to know what's going on in the company, just start smoking and hang out with the guys outside.
Yes, that's right. Because they talk to everybody. They talk to the other people who work on the other side of the organization or in a different department, or the developers talk to the testers, or they're all outside. They all know each other. They share.
And they have their their retrospectives like a couple of times a day.
Yes. Exactly. So there's so many great things that smokers do. It would be nice if we had those benefits without the smoking.
Yes. I can't believe we just built a case for smoking.
There's nothing stopping you from just going outside.
Take a break, go outside, talk to other people. Yes. Absolutely.
So is that one of the first things you recommend as well when a company hires you to bring about change? Maybe like, okay, everyone should start smoking now, or
no? But when you talk about that, then they see, because they know that. They know know who those people are, and they know also that they do talk to people who are in other parts of the company. So if they want to know what's going on, that's the first thing they do, is talk to a smoker to say, well, do you know if that other department is thinking about going to Agile? Or are they doing their daily stand-ups early in the morning, or do they do them late? Because they know all of the information.
So I was wondering, right? Because I just mentioned, like, when a company hires you, but do you actually get hired for, like, by companies to bring about change? Like, they tell you, like, hey, we're trying to improve our way of working, and we just cannot get it done. Can you help us do something like that? Or like, what's the problem that companies come to you with?
Well, I would say it depends, and of course, it's been, since, I'm trying to think, the last time I've traveled anywhere was in early January 2020.
Okay.
But now it's more. So I was just recently talking to a company in Europe, and they're growing. And the last time I was there, they said, "Oh, our company is just about ready to. We're looking for a new building." because we have reached 150 people, and that's about all we can hold here. And I said, whoa, 150. I said, that's a magic number. 150. I said, there's research by Robin Dunbar that shows a lot of companies, some religious groups, different organizations over time realize that 150 is a number where we sort of lose touch. We don't know those people anymore. We don't feel like we can talk to them anymore. And I said, that's going to be significant for your company because you've always been small and you've always felt like everybody knows everybody and you don't have to worry about organizational barriers. So you might think about that. Yeah. And that's all I said. But just a few weeks ago, they said, all right, Linda, we want you to come in and talk to us. And of course, I didn't fly to Europe to talk to them, but we just had some Zoom conversations about what is that number? What do other companies do? What do you think we should do? Or here's some experiments we could try. And it's more that kind of thing. I don't really move in and do it. I just, say what I know, and then you're free to experiment.
Yeah. So, I read your book, right? The Fearless Change. And I'm constantly thinking about, it sounds very smooth in the book, how change works, right? I'm not saying it's not hard, but the stories is this person did these patterns and they applied. And it goes more organically, right? How it's supposed to be, I think. But what is your view when it's the other way around? It comes top-down change, nothing of those things are applied, and they just say, as a basic example, right, we're going to go in an agile transformation. We're going to take the SAFe framework. Here are the course. Here's the plan. Here's all laid out. Because it's also a change, right? But then, how do you see this the distinction between this change approach?
So when we were writing the book, I was actually working for a big telecom company that was a subsidiary of AT&T, and the piece of it that we were working with was Bell Labs. And that's exactly how they did anything. Top down, some high-level executive, and there were many who were either directors or vice presidents, and they would be the change agent. And they would appoint somebody to be and it was called the evangelist. That's where the name corporate evangelist came from. It was used inside what became Lucent, but was originally AT&T Bell Labs. Yeah. It was top down, done by appointment. The evangelist often didn't even know what it was. Just was called into the vice president's office and he or she would say, okay, we want to do this. And so you're in charge. You're the change agent. Make it happen. So
I think the appoint is the key word here, right?
Yeah. And
instead of invite for volunteers or people who are passionate about it.
Yeah. And so that's where we started by saying the role of the evangelist should be really someone who cares.
Yeah.
Someone who believes. In fact, that's why we like the name evangelist. It is, in the beginning, only belief. You don't have any proof, typically. You just believe in it. But if you don't, and so it was really a message to Bell Labs to say, you're calling this person the corporate evangelist, but often they don't even know what it is and what the penalties are, the downsides are. And in the book, we're very careful to say the first person you have to convince is yourself.
Yeah.
So that was our way of addressing, what we had seen, because Mary Lynn had also seen it when she was on sabbatical in Denver. Same kind of thing, top down from some vice president who thought this was a good idea, and that, it can work. That's actually part of what we say is you can get people to change, but what you get there is compliance.
Yeah, correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Compliance.
So then,
from
then you cannot change. Yeah, then you cannot get the change, right? I mean, the way how I look at it, if the only result or the outcome is that you get compliance, it sounds a bit, let's say, hard to say. Oh, it changed. Yeah, I don't know. I consider a failure somehow in my head.
But
Yeah.
but maybe the goal is not to change. Why is the goal to change? Maybe the goal of the company is not to change. Maybe the goal of the company is to introduce something into the market, and maybe that's not necessarily a change within the organization.
Well, I think this is one of the critics that I think we had from Niels when he was in the podcast, right? It's more like change is all the time going to happen. And I guess, but also, for example, what Linda said in the beginning, like some companies never change and they are still here, and some others changed and they died, right? So what is the difference then?
And I think for a lot of, at least the large organizations that I've seen, they have some kind of strategy and they have some list of things they want to see. And so it's done when they can check off all the things on that list, and they don't really care in many cases whether there was any real change or not. They just want to see that checklist because now that's part of their performance evaluation, and they can show that to their boss, who's going to say, oh, well, you got this done, check, check, check. And they say, yeah, we did. And so their concern or their passion or their belief in whatever it was never there.
Yeah.
It's not a part of any of those change initiatives. It was just a bunch of check boxes that everybody was doing so that they would look good on their performance reviews.
Yes. So in the end, you end up playing the system. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is when you see agile transformations that work and agile transformations that don't work, you really have to stand back and say, well, what's the environment? Did people do it because they believed in it, because they had passion for it? And people don't even want to talk about that kind of thing. Or were they doing it because they had a bunch of check boxes and they wanted to get to the end of the first quarter by saying, all right, we need to have these 3 things checked off so I can get my performance review and my bonus, and that's all they cared about. No wonder.
Yeah. And is there like, in your point of view, like change fatigue? Like companies who are all the time trying to change, everything is a change program. And at some point people are like, oh my God, another change.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see that in the inside on one project I worked on, 777, which did the 777 airplane. Everybody was constantly, well, here's a new thing. In fact, we even did Kanban for a while because we had a new manager. He had read about it and he said, okay, here's what we're going to do. It didn't help. He just wanted to have another little checkbox so that he could show his boss that he was bringing in the latest and the greatest. So it was constant, managers constantly bringing in some new thing they'd read about in some publication so that they could put that on their performance review and they could look good. And again, they didn't really care.
So is it?
And how would you address that then?
Yeah.
As if you were like talking to yourself back then, what would you say to yourself? How to address that situation?
We just tried to survive.
Okay.
I mean, at the time we were working 60-hour weeks. I felt like I was sick the whole time. I usually ride my bike to work and I couldn't because we were coming to work when it was dark and we were staying there all day. And when we went home, it was dark and it wasn't safe to ride on the streets of Phoenix on your bicycle. And I didn't feel good. We had severe deadlines. Boeing was walking around looking at us. They would stand there and look over your shoulder to see what you were typing.
Oh, my God.
It was horrible. It was horrible. So some of the environments for big companies with big projects, there isn't any concern for anything. Just got to get this out the door.
So the most important question was the project delivered on time.
Yes, it was. Not only that, but the 777 airplanes certified early. It was one of the best planes that Boeing ever produced. When we were all standing out on the parking lot to see that prototype fly by, everyone was applauding and crying, and it was very emotional to say, look at that, a brand new airplane, and I wrote some little piece of the code that's doing the navigation. I mean, it was just overwhelming.
I can imagine.
Okay, so I'm really glad that you're mentioning this, because as you speak, I'm actually getting goosebumps.
Yeah, me too. Like shit, I would be like in that team.
And that's the thing is, like, the first half of your narrative about the Boeing was that it was like a not healthy environment to be a part of, and in the end, like the last part was
paid off.
You could just sense the pride.
Yep, that's right. And
but what was the price?
Remember, I was surprised,
but
because when we got out on the parking lot, I thought everyone, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, I thought we would all start applauding and whistling and shouting, but no, everybody was absolutely quiet. And when the plane came down, and it, he did a flyby, so he just soared right in front of us, and I could see old veterans with tears in their eyes watching this enormous, because it is a big 2-engine plane, this enormous plane just fly right in front of us. It was very emotional, very different from what I expected.
What you expected the thing to crash?
No, I thought, this is the United States. I thought everybody would be going, yay!
Okay.
No, it was absolutely silent.
But then to me that begs the question. You all, the entire team, every individual, and you spoke briefly about it, like put enormous sacrifice into this project to deliver it, and then there was some sort of, and the reward was obviously financial, has to be there. We're not talking about that, but then like the sense of pride and fulfillment, and the sense of I've been part of something big.
Yes. And that's, I still.
So how do you trade this off, right? So how do you trade this off? Maybe do you need sometimes to have this kind of environment like that pushes people to the most I don't know,
to the limits,
furthest acceptable limits to deliver something of greatness? Would that be justifiable?
No, I think that I thought about that project many times because there were it couldn't have been done. Test-driven development. No, you couldn't do that on an airplane. It's a big project and does require a different process. But there were so many things along the way that could have been done better. Little chunks of that where you think, oh, why did they need, like there was one translation project that had 150 people. They didn't need that. They really didn't.
Wow.
It was just throwing people at it. They said, we want to get this done. Let's add some more people. Yeah. They started out with 20, 25, and by the end of a couple of weeks, they had 150 people working on this project. They were just so pressure driven. No, you don't need all of that in order to have the pride of accomplishment. At least that's my opinion. And I still see that. I can remember flying on a 777 to India, and we're waiting to check in at immigration, and I was right behind the pilot. And so I told him, I said, well, do you like flying the 777? And he said, oh, yeah, it's been a great plane ever since it was produced. And I said, I wrote the ground-to-air communication module that's in that little box in between the pilot and the co-pilot. And he said, wow, really? And I said, do you like that little box? And he said, yeah.
Well, I do. I think this story is like pretty awesome, right? And I'm like, there's so many things in my head right now. But like, So do you think in an environment like that, with so much pressure, so much it takes, right? So much like money that they have to invest on it, the approach that your book suggests about how to bring changes to that organization would have worked there? Do you think you guys could have made some sort of healthier environment approaching what you describe on the book?
I'm not sure, but most of the people who were in that environment had been there forever. So the foundation, the core, the infrastructure was done by people who had done not just this new plane, the 777, but also done the 747, the 737. And so they were so wedded to the way things had been done in the past, it would have been very difficult. It was difficult enough because it was done in a new language. It was done in Ada. All the other work, it's hard to imagine airplanes are being written in Pascal, but that's what they are. It's a funny flavor of Pascal.
Yep.
So we had to do this in Ada, and they hated it. So anything new, and the whole plane was new. So it was just any change at all in that was really a struggle for anybody who wanted to institute that. And Boeing was instituting a lot of new changes for the 777. They did it, but they weren't happy about it.
So the thing that I find heartwarming maybe is that you helped write the software to the plane, and it was under harsh conditions. Maybe it even built some camaraderie amongst your colleagues. I don't know, but you still had the guts to actually get on the plane later, which to me testifies that I have a lot of faith in my colleagues to write the software in the proper way.
Well,
So I don't know.
It's not that so much. It's that the faith is in the FAA, so the Federal Aviation Authority. It's like faith now in drugs. It's not the drug companies; it's the certifying agency. And there is a certifying agency for avionics that is very, very, very careful. And they do a lot of testing. And that's where my faith lies.
Okay.
Makes sense. Up to Boeing or the company, the subcontractor I was working for, they would have taken shortcuts. They would have done other things. But the FAA said, no, you got to do this. And we want to make sure that it is, I don't know if you know a lot about testing, but black box testing, white box testing, branch testing, every kind of testing. And then they insisted on that. And there are testing tools that make sure there are no hidden corner cases where suddenly the airplane could wander off and get lost in some untested branch. That no, the FAA watches every line of code that is produced.
Okay.
So, wow.
I have one. I want to circle back on a bit on the patterns talk. As I was reading the book, and I couldn't help but just notice how many of these patterns I've used throughout my life, and it was kind of okay. I didn't know there was a word for this. I didn't know that this existed, and some other people were using it. So it was kind of self-confirming to some extent, kind of also being challenged. So one that actually kind of confirmed what I was doing, but we have been as group now discussing, and it was a bit challenging to me, was the corridor politics. So in the past, I worked as a manager in an organization, and then if we had to get something done, exactly as you suggest in the book, you see which people you talk to them one-on-ones, you figure out, you get some feedback, you adjust your proposal, you go to the other person, adjust your proposal, and you kind of do the groundwork for this idea, and then you call a meeting, and then you discuss it openly. Yeah. And that's how I did it. And then we discussed also with Higge here, with Rolf, and with other colleagues. And then in the same time, now we're going more and more into open spaces approach for dealing with issues. And to me, it was like, okay, is there room for
politics,
corridor politics, and in an area of open spaces? And well, can you? On one hand, I see the utility of the corridor politics, and I know, if you want to get a buy-in for an idea, it's really useful to do it. But is it Yeah.
It sounds a bit dirty, right? At least for me, when I talk about corridor politics, it sounds like.
So, I teach a class on influence strategies.
Yeah.
And we have the struggle always, the people who are in it, no matter what level, whether they're developers or testers or whether they're middle-level managers or high-level managers or executives, they always have that this sounds a little underhanded, this sounds a little devious. And what we have to realize, I think, is that these are tools. That's all they are, is tools. And yes, devious, deceitful, horrible people who wanted to do very bad things have used these same tools for different purposes. And the only thing that separates what you're going to do from what that person did is your intent.
Because obviously we're not those people. We're not dubious. We're not evil. We're not.
Well, of course, absolutely. That it's intent, and the people who study that, the scientists who do all the experiments to show these things really do work, you can measure it, are always careful to point out that you can use this tool. You can take any tool in a workshop. You could pick up a wrench and you could use it to murder someone. Does that mean the tool is bad?
So okay. This is a personal dilemma that I came across over the last week, and it's completely not related with our topic, but it kind of goes in this discussion of the tools. Mm-hmm. Is it ethical to use a certain tool? Because is knife good or bad, right? Yeah. It's like, it depends on whatever you do with it. So there was a big spur in the media around the latest stand-up by Dave Chappelle. I don't know if you've heard of it, Linda, but there is so then I went to thinking as using censorship as a tool, which is we've seen more and more on silencing people, silencing comedians, silencing different, and it's a tool. And I want to make the same argument it depends on your intent, right? Also for censorship, it depends what you intend to do with it. But then on the other hand, there's part of me that says, do we want to create a precedent where we justify censorship of certain individuals? Because the moment we start using that tool, you open the doors to use that to be able to justify any sort of censorship. So that's my personal struggle from the last 5 days, basically. I couldn't wrap my head around it.
Is that a tool that is too dangerous to even be used? Basically, that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like nuclear weapons, nuclear bomb, right?
Yeah.
It's there. Should we use it?
Well, but a nuclear bomb, not. I don't think what is the other justification of not killing, but
I don't know.
So these are philosophical dilemmas. And
I know. I said it's not in line with exactly what we've been talking about, but because you mentioned
it is and it isn't. But when I say dilemma, I mean there is no easy answer. And what we should also be careful to say is that there are social scientists who have done research on, people who have done horrible things. Like Hitler, like Stalin. What they find is that those people believe that they have good intent.
Exactly.
Yeah. The road to hell is paved with good intent, right?
Yeah, I'm doing it because I love my country. And so therefore I must slaughter tens of thousands of these other people who are getting in the way of making my country the greatest place it could possibly be. So their motives really are always good. And they believe themselves to be good people.
Yeah.
So how do you judge who's got good intent and who doesn't? it's a dilemma.
So you're gonna be with your dilemma puncher today.
Well, it's not just today. I mean, it's with the polarization of the politics, basically in the West, predominantly in U.S. and that, but like whatever happens in U.S. spills over in Europe as well, whether you want it or not. You get more of these dilemmas.
Yeah.
Like it's about protecting a certain subset of people from whatever harm, and then like which tools are you going to use for that?
So
yeah.
When we had the 2016 election, I was ready to pack up and leave my country and go anywhere just to get away. And then I thought, no, that's not going to solve the problem. I need to stay here and do something. And I looked around for an organization, or I wanted to be part of something that would help me address the dilemma that I saw in my own country. And I was lucky enough to find an organization called Braver Angels. And in that organization, we have workshops where we have equal numbers of red and blue people who come in to talk to one another. And
that's great.
When you're forced to do that, because normally we don't have conversations with any merit with people we don't agree with.
Yep.
We tend to talk to the people who are just like us. That's how organizations hire people. Even if they're interested in diversity, they say in the end, well, we thought this person would be a better fit for our culture. That's code for just like us. We want somebody like us. Yeah. So that is a really hard thing to do, to hang out with people who violently disagree with you about things you really care about abortion, about gun rights, about whether or not you think Donald Trump is a good president. It's very difficult.
Yep.
So what have you discovered on this journey of yours?
But when you do that, when you have a good communication, and in these workshops, we have some severe rules. You can't just talk about anything. You have rules. We have little exercises. When you do that, you find out that these people are not stupid. They're not ill-intentioned. They're good people.
Yeah.
They're not people who don't care. They do care.
Yeah.
They just don't see the world the same way you do. Their environment is different. Their educational background might be different. But does that mean they are wrong and you are right?
Yeah.
From your point of view, probably, but in reality, not.
No. And what it comes down to is that we are all living in a delusional version of reality. We see what we see, but that's not necessarily the way things are. And those people who see it differently, that doesn't mean that they see reality clearly either. We're both looking at distorted views, and if we just spend our time saying, well, you must be wrong, well, you must be stupid, well, you don't care, then we're never going to make progress. So the idea is not to convince each other. The idea is to find a way that we can work together.
In a way, that's a bit terrifying, though, that no one sees reality as it is. Like, if you think about it, that's actually a bit, at least to me, it's a bit scary. Where you have like these big world leaders with all their power and stuff, that they also have a probably distorted vision of reality based on their environment, their upbringing, their views. And it's scary to me. Well, I don't know about you guys, but
Well, remember that I think we started this whole conversation by saying that it's the job of your brain to keep you alive. given your environment and your genetic makeup, which, pretty much determines what you're going to be, it's not the job of your brain to show you reality. It not only doesn't do that, it can't. There are limits on how much information you can take in, even for your visual system, which is your most powerful for people who can see. For blind people, no. But if you can see, you have an enormous amount of brain real estate devoted to seeing, and you can measure that, and you can show that you don't really see what's out there.
No, we just see a little part of the whole electromagnetic spectrum, right?
Hardly anything. You see hardly any of it. And so that's just your visual system. Let's not even talk about what you smell and what you hear and what you can touch. You just are limited in what you can take in, and then what do you do with that? Your brain puts it all together and says, okay, here's what the world looks like, and it makes mistakes.
Yep.
Those mistakes can be predicted, so we know what those mistakes are, and we all make them. And so what we wind up with is this feeling of certainty that I see the world as it is, when that is nonsense. We should know by now. Science tells us, no, you don't. You're making it up.
It's the emotional side.
Yeah.
No.
You want to feel sure that you do. You are sure that you do. That's the job of the brain, to make you feel like you see reality. But now we should know intellectually, our system too should be telling us, no, we don't. So let's be a little more tolerant. Let's be a little more humble. Let's be a little more open.
Yep.
Yeah, essentially, we only see the things that we
want to
find
see.
important.
Of course.
That we want to see, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's it.
And then
All
that's
right.
our reality. Like the things that we find important at that moment, that's what we see.
Yes.
And if individually, that's different. So individually, the world is different.
Yes. Now that doesn't mean that we should be, and we're back to the dilemma again, we don't tolerate people who are mentally ill or sociopaths or bullies or murderers. We do realize that there are pathologies in the world, people whose either genetic makeup or environment has led them to a very bad place. And they do bad things that most of us, if we were going to take a vote, even if they think they're well-intentioned, most of us realize this is not a good thing if you are murdering tens of thousands of people, especially children, because you think, oh, well, they're Jewish or whatever it is. We don't tolerate that. And those are really pretty clear cases.
Yep.
It's not anything where most of us would debate.
No. But then the debate comes in like when you try to kind of find where the lines in between are.
Yes.
Like the extremes are really easy. Like when you talk like extreme right organizations, like really easy to define what it is. But like the things when you try to have this more nuanced conversation, that's like where the lines are really blurry. Like what is?
Yeah, but I think it also comes from on the way that we are trying to avoid for that to happen, right? Because that's what normally the arguments are. Like, it starts like this, and then it's going to become like that. And I think we try to prevent this big thing to become something.
Yeah, but even there have been so many great books written right now. I can't remember them all, but even members of the Ku Klux Klan that have a history of lynching and cross burning. There are stories of individuals in those organizations who have at some point had a turning point and realized this is wrong. What I believe is wrong. And now I'm not going to do that anymore. So there are so many of those stories that we should continue having conversations with those people, realizing this could be their moment. This could be the time when they say, I now see things differently.
Yeah.
What you just mentioned reminded me of, Daryl Davis?
Yeah. Yes.
So he was a black blues musician who basically single-handedly converted more than 200 KKK members.
Yes.
So.
And all he did was just have conversations. He didn't use...
Be curious and listen and...
Yeah, he just talked to them. Many of them had never had a conversation, a real conversation with a black person.
Yeah.
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 And there is a pattern in the book. Fear conversation.
Fearless change.
Yes.
Fearless. Yes,
Yeah.
the fearless one.
Exactly.
So we all need to do that.
Yeah.
Those hard conversations. Not with the idea that you're going to go out and convert the world, but because by listening, by being open.
Yeah. Totally agree.
All right. So I think that about wraps it up here. I don't know, Henrique Panche, do you have any last things to share or to ask Linda?
Of course, but that's going to take another 3 hours for all of us here.
All right. Well, Linda, I don't know if you have anything to add, but if not, then we would like to thank you very much for your time and joining us here in the podcast. I've learned a lot about my brain and how it works, and I guess the main takeaway is also, like you said, right? Just talk to people, have a conversation. And I'm wondering if people would like to have some more information about what it is that you do. Can we just direct them to your website?
That works.
All right. And do you also have like a Twitter account maybe where people can reach out to you?
It's at Rising Linda.
All right. We'll include that in the description below. All right, Linda. Well, thank you very much again for your time here. Panche and Henrique, you guys, thank you as well.
Thank you very much, Linda, as well from my side.
Exactly.
And also shout out to Marilyn, because I also attended your events from a couple of weeks ago. It was really nice, really useful.
Good. Thank you. So you were saying you don't want me to close anything down.
I'm going to thank the listener right now for listening. If you have any suggestions, you can send us an email at podcast@4scouts.nl or reach us on Twitter @4scouts. With that, I will close off the podcast. Thank you very much, and see you guys next time.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Scoutcast, Roasting Marshmallows, with your host, Rolf Surd. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit 4scouts.nl and on Twitter @4scouts. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on Scoutcast, Roasting Marshmallows.